In the heart of an imposing mountain range, where nature was sovereign, there was a trail forgotten by time and hidden by the shadows of giant pine trees. Its name, Trail of Death, was whispered in fear by local residents, a story that turned into one of the scariest horror stories in the region. It was said that those who dared to venture there never returned. Sarah, a fearless young adventurer, craved strong emotions and extraordinary challenges. The legend of the Trail of Death, dark as it was, piqued his curiosity like bait for a predator. While many feared the desolate trail and the stories of people who disappeared into its depths, Sarah saw an opportunity to prove that the supernatural was just a fable. She was determined to challenge this urban legend and discover the truth behind it. Sarah gathered a small group of friends who shared her passion for adventure. They prepared their backpacks, camping gear, and supplies for a journey on the Trail of Death, ready to face the unknown. As they approached the trail entrance, the mood changed, becoming dark and ominous, as if nature itself was trying to dissuade them. However, the determination of Sarah and her friends remained unshakable. The trail entered the dense pine forest, with trees that seemed to touch the sky, blocking most of the sunlight. An oppressive silence hung in the air, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The group's footsteps echoed on the trail, becoming a lonely sound amidst the unsettling serenity. As they advanced, the atmosphere in the forest became more and more ominous. Unsettling whispers seemed to echo from the shadows, whispering unintelligible words that sent chills down everyone's spines. Sarah tried to ignore the disturbing sounds, insisting they were just a manifestation of her own anxieties. As the group entered the forest, the whispers became clearer, almost as if the forest itself was trying to communicate with them. Sarah began to notice that her friends were becoming more and more nervous, and the feeling of unease was starting to get to them. However, Sarah was determined to press on, ignoring the forest's unspoken warnings. The legend of the Trail of Death was just a story, after all. They pressed on, confident that daylight and friendship would protect them. As afternoon turned to night, the group found themselves trapped under the cover of darkness. The forest came alive with night sounds, but they were not the usual sounds of nature. It was the ominous whispers that now echoed more strongly than ever. The group decided to camp, lighting a fire to ward off the fear that was beginning to settle in their hearts. Sitting around the fire, they tried to keep their spirits up, laughing and telling stories. However, the fear continued to creep in. The whispers persisted, as if the forest itself was mocking them, whispering dark secrets that were beyond their understanding. It was then that, from within the forest, an icy sound cut through the night air. It was a sinister and inhuman laugh, echoing through the trees. The group cowered, their terrified gazes meeting for answers. There was no doubt that something was wrong in that dark forest. Sarah, despite the fear that gripped her, decided they needed to investigate. It was important to discover the origin of that disturbing laughter. Armed with flashlights, the group ventured into the forest, following the sound of laughter that seemed to get closer and closer. They were determined to face whatever it was and discover the truth behind the legend of the Trail of Death. As the group moved further away from the camp, the sinister laughter continued to echo through the forest, becoming a disturbing presence in the air. As they advanced towards the source of the laughter, the sounds around them became increasingly unsettling. The darkness was oppressive, and the silence of the forest was broken only by eerie whispers. The whispers seemed to grow in intensity, as if the trees themselves were trying to communicate with the group. It was impossible to make out the words, as they were unintelligible whispers, but they had a chilling effect. Sarah, although determined to discover the truth, felt a growing uneasiness. The flashlights cast a dim light that cut through the darkness, revealing twisted trees and shadows that seemed to move on their own. Sarah's friends looked around, their faces pale with fear. They began to question the wisdom of continuing to pursue the source of the laughter, but Sarah refused to back down. She would not allow fear to stop her. As they advanced, the whispers seemed to come to life. It was as if the trees had invisible eyes that watched the group with dark curiosity. Every step in that forest became an ordeal, a battle against the feeling of being watched and judged by unknown forces. Finally, they arrived at a small open space in the forest. The place was lit by the dim light of the moon, revealing a shadowy figure standing in the center. It was a woman, but her appearance was distorted and grotesque. Her eyes glowed with an evil light as she continued to laugh. The group was paralyzed by fear as the woman's laugh turned into an unsettling laugh. She seemed to be in a trance, her tousled hair flowing around her. It was a terrifying scene, as if the forest itself had given life to this shadowy figure. Sarah, overcoming her initial shock, tried to communicate with the woman. She asked who it was and why it was there, but the figure just laughed inhumanely, without giving clear answers. The woman's eyes seemed to penetrate Sarah's soul, as if she knew unfathomable secrets. The atmosphere in the room was permeated with tension, and the fear was almost palpable. Sarah's friends were terrified, their voices shaking as they begged to get out of there. The figure, however, did not seem willing to let them go. With an enigmatic tone, the woman revealed that she was linked to the forest itself, which was her home and her prison. She was an ancient spirit, a guardian of the path of death, and was there to warn intruders. She said that the path was cursed, and that everyone who walked it was destined to be consumed by the shadows. The woman's words were cryptic and full of veiled threats. She prophesied that if the group continued to follow the trail, they would meet a terrifying fate that no one would escape. The fear that was already present in the hearts of Sarah's friends now intensified, and the choice that lay before them was terrifying. Sarah, although shaken by her encounter with the shadowy woman, was reluctant to accept the legend of the Trail of Death as the final truth. She believed that the human mind could be deceived by illusions and superstitions. She knew she needed to find out more, that she needed to explore the trail to the end for answers. Fate was now in Sarah's hands, as the group faced an agonizing decision whether to continue or retreat. The group of friends found themselves at a dark crossroads. The shadowy figure, with his sinister laugh and cryptic warnings, left them all in a state of panic and uncertainty. The woman's words about the Death Trail's curse had shaken their courage. Sarah, however, remained determined to unravel the mystery and challenge the legend that haunted the trail. While her friends hesitated and begged them to return, Sarah decided she would continue alone. She believed she needed to move forward to discover the truth, regardless of the dark woman's frightening warnings. With a mixture of determination and fear, she walked away from the group and returned to the trail, leaving them behind. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, but Sarah was determined to face it. The darkness of the forest enveloped her, and the feeling of being watched by invisible eyes accompanied her with every step. She had no flashlights to guide her, just the faint light of the moon filtering through the treetops. As she advanced, the atmosphere in the forest seemed to grow even denser, as if nature itself was conspiring against her. The whispers from the trees intensified, becoming almost deafening. Each unintelligible murmur was like a sarcastic laugh, mocking his stubbornness. As she continued forward, Sarah came across a scene that left her astonished. It was a solitary and imposing tree, with roots that seemed to sink deep into the earth. It was covered in strange carvings and sinister symbols, as if it were a dark altar. The place exuded a disturbing aura. As she approached, Sarah realized that the sinister laughter that had accompanied her since her encounter with the shadowy woman was closer than ever. It was as if the tree's own laughter emanated. She looked at the tree and, with a growing feeling of horror, saw that the carvings and symbols began to move, as if coming to life. The tree, or whatever it was, began to speak in a haunting voice, revealing that it was an ancient entity, the guardian of the path of death. She explained that the trail was cursed by an ancient magic, that those who ventured upon it were doomed to face their deepest fears and be consumed by them. Sarah felt fear gripping her heart, but her curiosity compelled her to continue. She asked what she should do to break the curse and find the end of the trail. The ancient entity responded cryptically that she would have to confront her own fears and survive the trials that awaited her in the dark forest. The tree then began to tell a frightening story of another adventurer who had dared to follow the trail of death. This adventurer had been confronted by horrific visions and his own inner demons until madness consumed him. He'd become part of the forest, doomed to haunt it forever. Sarah swallowed hard, understanding the seriousness of the situation. The ancient entity gave her a choice: return the path she had taken and leave the forest, or continue and face whatever awaited her on the trail. Knowing she couldn't turn back, Sarah made the decision to continue, determined to unravel the mystery and break the curse of the death trail. With each step forward, the darkness of the forest seemed to intensify. and the whispers from the trees became an ominous cacophony. Sarah didn't know what awaited her, but she knew she needed to confront her own fears and the horrors of the trail. The challenge was dark and frightening, but she was determined to discover the truth behind the terrifying legend of the Trail of Death. Sarah was now alone on the death trail, surrounded by the oppressive darkness of the forest. The whispers of the trees were a constant presence, as if nature itself was witnessing your journey. Every step she took brought her closer to the unknown destination that awaited her. The forest seemed to come to life as it progressed, and the night sounds became more unsettling. She heard murmurs and whispers that seemed to whisper unfathomable secrets. Her senses were on high alert, and fear accompanied her every moment. The darkness was almost tangible, and Sarah moved forward, guided only by the faint moonlight that filtered through the treetops. She felt like the forest was watching her, judging her for her stubbornness. The whispers didn't leave her, but she tried to ignore them, focusing on her goal of reaching the end of the trail. As it continued, the forest seemed to become even more sinister. The earth beneath his feet was soaked, as if the earth itself was crying. The path ahead narrowed, forcing her to proceed carefully. Each dark twist revealed more mysteries and unexpected challenges. Sarah began to feel the presence of invisible eyes watching her, as if she were the center of a dark audience. The whispers grew in intensity, becoming almost deafening. She was alone, facing the terror that the forest held. As she progressed, she came across frightening visions that seemed to emerge from the shadows. Distorted figures and macabre faces appeared, trying to drag her into the abyss of her own fears. Sarah fought the visions, knowing they were part of the challenges that awaited her. The journey became increasingly challenging, with nightmares manifesting before their eyes. But she persisted, refusing to give in to the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. She knew she had to face her own inner demons to uncover the truth behind the legend of the Trail of Death. As he advanced, the whispers of the forest turned into sinister laughter, echoing through the trees. It was as if the forest itself was mocking his determination. Sarah tried to remain calm, but the pressure was overwhelming. Finally, she came to a dark clearing, lit only by the dim light of the moon. It was an eerie place, where shadows seemed to dance around you. In the center of the clearing, she saw an immense, ancient-looking tree with roots that stretched into the earth like gnarled claws. Sarah realized that this tree was the heart of the Death Trail's curse, the epicenter of all the terror she had faced. With determination, she approached the tree, knowing she would have to confront whatever awaited her. The tree, or the entity that inhabited it, spoke to her again. It was a sinister voice, full of malice that mocked his courage. The entity explained that the fate of those who dared to walk the trail was determined by their ability to face their own fears and face the trials of the forest. Sarah realized she was at the epicenter of her own journey of terror, where she would have to face her deepest fears. The forest began to transform, revealing visions of her personal nightmares, demons that tormented her in her mind. She found herself confronting her fears, her insecurities, and regrets. The fight was internal, a battle of the mind and soul. She faced her distorted views with courage, refusing to be dominated by fear. She knew the only way to break the curse was to confront her own dark self. As the battle within intensified, the ancient tree seemed to rejoice in its suffering. The forest was alive with dancing shadows, as if they were witnesses to his ordeal. Finally, when Sarah confronted her deepest fears and accepted her own darkness, the ancient tree stopped mocking. The sinister laughter gave way to a sepulchral silence, and the darkness that enveloped her began to dissipate. She had faced the terror the forest had thrown at her and emerged stronger. The forest was now at peace, as if the curse of the death trail had been broken. Sarah looked at the ancient tree, which seemed satisfied with her determination. She knew she had overcome the legend, broken the curse, and found the truth behind the Trail of Death. With a sigh of relief, Sarah returned the path she had taken, this time accompanied by silence and the absence of ominous whispers. She had faced the horror and emerged as the heroine of her own frightening story. The legend of the Trail of Death would continue to intrigue people's imaginations, but now she knew that the truth was far more complex than any dark tale.